All right, stand by. 10 seconds to go.
Count.
Ready, camera.
And
2,
1.
1. Roll for record.
At the top of our rundown today is a very simple question. Do you like your coffee black? As you've probably heard, Starbucks baristas have been told by management to engage customers in conversations about racism in America. Of course, all while they brew their triple caramel macchiatos and toffee mocha frappuccinos. Go ahead and let the healing begin. I'm John Phillips, and this is Rundown. Joining us from Dallas, Texas is author and PJTV commentator Mr. Scott Ott. And here in sunny Los Angeles is stand-up comic Stephen Cruiser. Cruiser, if you go to a Starbucks and you order a white mocha, are you a racist?
Definitely. How could you not be? Or if you order something black and they say room for cream and you say, what are you trying to gentrify my coffee? You know, there's all kinds of things you can do here. This is, you know what I think about here? First of all, Howard Schultz is a pompous you-know-what, but he's a very successful CEO, so he's earned some of that pomposity. However, I bet if you did a poll right now of every barista working today, 99% would be cringing over being asked to do this right now.
Now, I'm told that Scott Ott has already gotten in on this. He was at a Starbucks recently and ordered his coffee, and they said, do you take it black? And he said, no, that's how I take my accountants. Scott, is that right?
You know, you lost me at Scott was at a Starbucks recently. It just completely left the world of possible fact at that point. You know, actually, I use the Folgers Black Silk. I like it as dark as I can possibly get it. And I don't have to have conversations with anybody because I stay at home and make and drink my own coffee. You know, Howard Schultz is, if nothing else, he's a marketing genius. And as you say in the PR business, there's no such thing as bad PR. Anything that draws attention to your brand, people will eventually forget why it was they were talking about you. But the word Starbucks is now, dribbling from lips across the country.
You know, it's funny. My mom works at the VA. She is an administrator there. And when they hire people, they have to go through this personality profile, and they have to ask them all kinds of questions about what they like to do in their free time, that sort of thing. And she was looking at some of the new paperwork that they sent in, and she was scratching her head one day, and I said, what's wrong? And she said, I don't see can nurses draw blood on here anywhere. When you're at a Starbucks and you're having a back and forth with the barista, shouldn't the conversation probably be about coffee?
Well, that's how Starbucks became successful in the first place. They focused on one thing and they did it very well for a long time before they started branching into music and everything else. And this is wandering far afield here right now. This is not, the purview. One of the things that Schultz said that I thought was really weird was he said, well, because we don't talk about this enough. If there's something that we've talked about plenty in the last 6 years, it's race in this country. To pretend that we're not conversing about race in Barack Obama's America is absolutely ludicrous. So at least be a little more upfront about it. Yes, it's a marketing ploy, but still come up with a better excuse for why you're doing it in the first place, because we're talking about race plenty all the time.
You know, Scott, when you go to somebody's house for Thanksgiving dinner, what's the rule of thumb? You don't talk about sex, politics, or religion. You stay away from those things because they're too hot and you want to keep everything pleasant and you don't want to start a fight. Race is arguably hotter than sex, politics, or religion. If you're running a business, why do you want people talking about this when so many feelings out there are spicy, to say the least?
Well, and that's so true, because even when you look at the political world, business people are very reluctant to be publicly affiliated with who they give their contributions to. And that's why political action committees have started where they are able to insulate by a couple of different committee layers so that they can hide who's given this money, because nobody wants to tick off the customer. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense in your business to say, let's start inflammatory conversations. But, I get the idea that Howard Schultz is kind of like the young Buddha looking over the palace wall and seeing all the hurt out in the world, and finally he decides he's going to leave the palace and wander about and find out what life is really like. Except in this case, the young Buddha decided to just stay in the palace and tell his little serfs out there that they were the ones who were supposed to wander around and see what life is really like. If Howard Schultz really wants to be effective in this world, start going into inner city neighborhoods and finding places where you can locate a Starbucks, and then find out that you're going to have to charge a little less per cup.
You know, race is a political issue now too, especially more so in the last 6 years, and it's a common problem amongst people who are politically active or heavily politically involved, and it happens on our side too, where we assume that the rest of the world is like that and wants to talk about politics, wants to talk about activist-related issues all the time. I think that's another mistake Schultz is making here. You find out that most of the world doesn't. Even the Starbucks regular clientele, I would venture to say 80% of them are just in there for the coffee. Most people don't pay attention to politics and cultural issues like that like the rest of us do.
Well, and the customers are weighing in
John,
on this, particularly some of the minority customers. In fact, I think we have a tweet. Hashtag race together is what happens when a 1%er without any actual anti-racist education or training has a midlife white man's burden crisis. Why would you want to bring this on yourself, Scott?
Well, you know, before we started recording this episode, you and Cruiser were talking about your brackets and the NCAA basketball tournament. You want to start a conversation that brings the races together in this country? Start writing NCAA brackets on every cup of Starbucks coffee. That'll get people talking, not to antagonize each other. That'll get people coming together around something we all love.
That's very true. Although you need a big cup because there's 64 teams.
You have better healing through sport. Wait, you're going to have to go with that. What's the one above Venti now? The Mongo? Is Mongo one of them?
I think they call that the Rosie
Gonzaga.
O'Donnell.
It's going to be the Gonzaga that's like this big, man.
What other companies do you see following suit here? We saw Chick-fil-A get in a lot of trouble when the CEO weighed in on gay marriage. Do you think that other corporations are going to follow the lead from Starbucks and get more involved in politics, specifically during the day-to-day business hours?
I don't think so, because, you know, the Chick-fil-A thing was something that the CEO said it wasn't really something they were trying to institutionalize in the company, and that's what Schultz is trying to do here. And, you know, Schultz is in the mothership up in Seattle, too, so he's very insulated. He's surrounded by people who are like, you know, always want to talk about leftist politics or things like that all the time. But I think that there was backlash here. I think Starbucks can weather it because their clientele is so devoted. It's almost cultish. I'm one of them. I love going to Starbucks. I prefer Starbucks over any of the other popular coffee chains. They're the only ones that know how to make a latte. So I think that they will weather this. I don't think other companies can weather it as well. I mean, the guy who instituted this policy, the upper level exec, deleted his Twitter account the first day because he was catching so much heat about this. And I don't think most companies can handle that.
Well, this is not the first time this has happened in the world of Java. Scott, I don't know if you remember this, but at one point in the late 1990s, I believe Juan Valdez lectured all of his customers about immigration reform.
God.
You know, that escapes me. Although I do remember the 1970s commercial, which was the classic, coffee calms you down and it picks you up. It gives you the serenity to dream it and the vitality to do it. Is there anything coffee can't do? Perhaps it can solve the race relation problem in this country.
I don't know. It's fun. When you go to the Starbucks in the morning, this is my favorite thing to do. I sit there, I bring my newspaper in, or I bring my laptop, or I do whatever. I do my morning business there. I prepare for coming to PJTV or prepare to go in the radio show. And there's always groups of older guys that are sitting around with a paper and they're talking politics.
Yep.
And I always love to eavesdrop in on the conversation because they're so entertaining. Now, part of the reason that they're so entertaining is they're politically incorrect to the nth degree. If these guys start talking about race when they're trying to pay for their cup of coffee, can you imagine?
I think this is something that might be worth filming for a few days if it actually does keep playing out over some time. But I eavesdrop like that a lot too. My daughter she starts to cringe a little every once in a while because I'll start to roll my eyes or go, oh, please, stuff like to the guy sitting at the table next to me, and she's always afraid it's going to escalate.
Here's what I want. I want Cruiser as the barista behind the counter, and I want Don Rickles to come in and order a Frappuccino.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Every Polish joke known to man would be told during the course of the 3 to 5
Why do you
minutes
hate pierogi, Don?
All right, that's all the time we have for today, but now it's your turn. Is a chat with your local barista going to bring about racial healing? Do those who claim to want to have a frank discussion about race even want to hear opinions that differ from their own? Tell us what you think in the comments section below. I'm John Phillips. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.